Have you ever found yourself in a conversation maybe wondering what's really going on? Beneath the surface.
Hmm?
What unspoken thoughts are flying around? What hidden motivations might be driving the person across from you?
Yeah, it's that feeling, isn't it?
It's that universal desire, I think, to truly understand people, to maybe even, well, read people like a book.
Exactly.
Well, today that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking a deep dive into that idea, exploring the really potent insights from Patrick King's book, Read People Like a Book.
It's a great title.
It is. And look, this isn't about manipulation or anything like that. It's about equipping you, our listener, with a sort of finely tuned set of tools. Tools to see beyond the superficial stuff.
To decipher that unspoken language of behavior.
Yes. And hopefully enhance pretty much every interaction you have, whether it's social, professional, or just, daily life.
Right.
So our mission for you in this deep dive is basically to pull out the most actionable insights from King's work. Think of it like a shortcut.
A shortcut to becoming more perceptive.
Exactly. More perceptive, more empathetic, and just fundamentally better at navigating the, let's face it, pretty intricate world of human interaction.
It can be complex.
Totally. So we'll cover everything from those invisible psychological drivers, subtle nonverbal cues, to broader personality blueprints, and even some practical observation techniques, maybe even spotting when someone isn't quite giving you the full picture.
It's like a comprehensive look.
Let's hope so. Okay, so let's unpack King's approach. Where should we start? I think maybe with the ultimate question. What truly drives people?
That's the foundation, really.
The book kicks off emphasizing that every single action, no matter how small it seems, has a reason, whether we're aware of it or it's totally unconscious.
And what's really fascinating there, I think, is how King argues that if you understand these underlying motivations, you gain this incredible power, not just to predict behavior, but to really grasp it.
And maybe even positively influence it.
Potentially, yes. It's like working backwards, you see. From the action you observe, back to the motivation, and then finally to the individual themselves. He suggests this is the absolute bedrock of effective people reading.
Okay, so these core motivations. King starts with something he calls the pleasure principle. It sounds simple, maybe even obvious.
Well, yes and no. King argues it's fundamentally quite simple.
Yeah.
At our core, we're basically wired to seek pleasure and, maybe even more powerfully, to avoid pain.
Right, the avoidance part feels stronger sometimes.
It often is. And this isn't just about, chasing momentary happiness. It's about how our deep-seated perceptions of pleasure and pain profoundly shape every decision, every single reaction.
So if you want to know why someone does something,
Look for the pleasure they're aiming for, or maybe the pain they're desperately trying to avoid. It's often one or the other, or sometimes both.
that's a powerful lens. And building on that, King brings in a classic framework, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but reapplies it for people reading.
Right, we all kind of know the pyramid, don't we?
Yeah, basic needs at the bottom, self-actualization at the top.
Exactly. But King's genius here, I think, isn't just reminding us of the levels, it's showing us how to quickly pinpoint where someone currently sits on that ladder. What's their primary struggle right now?
So is it financial security,
Yeah.
or maybe a need for belonging or recognition?
Precisely. Identifying that instantly tells you the why behind actions that might seem irrational on the surface. It lets you bypass the surface chatter and understand their deepest priorities in that specific moment.
That makes it immediately practical. Okay, then King takes us a bit deeper, into territory like Carl Jung's shadow concept. This one felt, well, a bit more abstract initially.
It can seem that way, but King makes it surprisingly useful. What he highlights about the shadow is that it holds those parts of ourselves we often ignore or, disown.
Our insecurities, flaws, maybe even strengths we don't acknowledge.
All of that. And he shows how these often pop up as kind of exaggerated behaviors in others. For instance, think about an overly critical colleague. King suggests they might not just be harsh.
They could be projecting their own fear of inadequacy, their shadow.
Exactly. Recognizing that potential dynamic shifts your response.
Yeah.
You move from maybe feeling defensive to having a more compassionate understanding of their inner complexity, their own struggles.
So it's less about judging and more about understanding the roots. And connected to that, the idea of the inner child really stood out, how past experiences just linger.
Yes, King really emphasizes that. Our inner child reflects those formative experiences from youth, and they can profoundly influence our adult behavior, often what looks like an adult overreaction.
Might actually be someone acting from an unhealed or vulnerable part of that inner child.
That's the idea. Recognizing this allows for much more empathetic and, frankly, effective communication.
Yeah.
Because you're addressing the underlying vulnerability, not just reacting to the surface behavior.
It's always about going deeper than the immediate reaction, isn't it? And to protect ourselves, we often use these subconscious strategies, defense mechanisms.
Precisely. King highlights how people instinctively use things like denial, rationalization, projection, you name it, all to protect their ego from discomfort or threat.
They kind of warp reality a bit.
In a way, yes, to shield the self-image. And in doing so, they actually provide this powerful window into an individual's deepest fears and how they see themselves. Observing these mechanisms gives you a direct line, almost, to their internal world.
Okay, so let's try to bring this together. Imagine you're in a meeting and you notice a colleague getting really anxious about deadlines.
Yeah.
Instead of just labeling them anxious colleague, King's insights suggest you could maybe see that behavior as, what, a fear of failure? Perhaps rooted in past experiences or a need for esteem, like back to Maslow.
Exactly. That understanding, that deeper perspective, allows you to adjust your approach. Maybe you offer reassurance framed around their need for security, or reframe the task to appeal to their desire for competence.
It's not just about better communication, then. It actually helps influence the situation positively.
That's the goal. You move from a simple judgment to a more nuanced understanding, which often leads to more productive outcomes.
Okay, shifting gears a little, let's talk about the unspoken stuff. The body doesn't lie. That's a core message King really drives home, right?
Oh, absolutely. People's true emotions, their real intentions, they often just leak out through nonverbal signals.
Right.
Even when their words are telling a completely different story.
It's like a parallel conversation happening.
Indeed. And King reminds us, nonverbal communication is incredibly instinctual. It was our original language, long before words. The real skill, as he lays it out, isn't about just spotting one single gesture.
No.
No, it's about diligently gathering data, observing carefully, and then interpreting the whole emerging pattern. That's where the genuine insights are found, acknowledging the complexity of it all.
And one of the most, well, fascinating aspects King highlights are micro-expressions. These are incredibly fast.
Almost invisibly fast sometimes. Micro-expressions, drawing on Paul Ekman's work, are these super brief, involuntary facial movements. We're talking like 1/30th of a second.
Wow.
And they reveal genuine underlying emotions. King focuses on the 6 universals: happiness, sadness, disgust, anger, fear, surprise. But he really stresses that context is absolutely vital.
So you can't just see a flicker and jump to a conclusion.
Definitely not.
Really?
He teaches us to use them as pieces of a much larger puzzle, not as definitive proof on their own.
Got it. So it's not just the face then. The rest of the body language gives us a huge amount of information too. It complements the face.
Absolutely. King draws on experts like ex-FBI agent Joe Navarro, emphasizing how postures, gestures, movements, they provide these rapid, often spontaneous insights into emotional states.
They're like an instinctual barometer of feelings, bypassing our conscious control sometimes.
Often, yes. Think about those little self-soothing gestures we all do. Sometimes we don't even realize we're doing them.
Like touching your face or fidgeting, rubbing your neck.
Exactly. Those are what King calls pacifying behaviors. They're often quite clear subconscious signals of discomfort, stress, or anxiety. And similarly, defensive postures.
Crossed arms, turning away.
Right. They instantly suggest someone feels vulnerable or maybe threatened. They're communicating that something isn't quite right for them in that moment, even if their words are saying everything's fine.
This is where King really emphasizes the power of clusters, isn't it? It's not about seeing crossed arms and immediately thinking defensive.
Precisely. This is probably one of the most crucial takeaways from this section. Effective people reading means looking for patterns and clusters of behavior, both verbal and nonverbal together, not fixating on one isolated thing.
Because crossed arms could just mean they're cold.
Exactly. It's the accompanying cues. What's their facial expression doing? What's their tone of voice like? What's the context of the whole conversation that provides the real, less ambiguous meaning?
So for you, our listener, maybe think about how you could start observing inconsistencies between words and nonverbals in your own interactions. Try paying attention to the whole picture, the cluster of signals.
It really does lead to a much richer understanding, doesn't it?
Definitely. Okay, so we've looked at the inner workings, the motivations, and the unspoken language. But how do we connect these insights to understand someone's more fundamental patterns, their personality?
Right. How do we go beyond just real-time observation to grasp the underlying operating system of a person, so to speak.
Yeah. King delves into frameworks that help us understand those persistent, maybe lifelong patterns of behavior that make each of us unique.
This is where personality frameworks become really useful. They offer these theoretical models to help us make sense of human complexity. They provide a valuable lens for understanding those enduring patterns. And King gives you ways to actually use them quickly.
And the most widely accepted of these, which King helps us sort of gauge quickly, are the big five personality traits.
Yes, the big five. Openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism. They're pretty standard language in psychology.
But King helps us go beyond just knowing the labels.
Exactly. He shows how to try and swiftly gauge someone's dominant traits in a real interaction.
Yeah.
Are they highly open to new ideas, curious, or more grounded, maybe resistant to change? Are they super conscientious, organized, or more spontaneous?
And knowing their baseline helps predict reactions.
It helps predict their likely default reactions and preferred communication style. It's incredibly useful context.
Then we have Jung and the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs type indicator. Very popular, but King offers a key caveat here.
Right. The MBTI, which sorts personalities into those 16 types based on 4 dichotomies like extroversion versus introversion, thinking versus feeling, and so on. It's useful, especially for self-reflection.
Right.
But King rightly cautions that it definitely simplifies the complexities of human personality. People are very rarely just one thing or the other. It's more of a guideline, a starting point for thinking, not some rigid, definitive classification. We're all way more nuanced than a 4-letter code.
Good point. And a further simplification King mentions is 𝐏𝐿's temperaments. How do those fit in practically?
𝐏𝐿 condenses those MBTI types into 4 broader temperaments: the guardian, the artisan, the idealist, and the rational. King presents these as tools to help us quickly identify fundamental styles of being.
So knowing someone's general temperament helps tailor communication.
It can. Yeah, it can help you predict their likely values, understand their typical decision-making approach, and adjust how you interact accordingly.
Okay. But for something that digs deeper, beyond just observable behavior and into the why, King highlights the Enneagram.
Yes, the Enneagram is distinct because it focuses on 9 core types. But crucially, they're based on core motivations and fears, not just external behaviors.
So it's trying to explain why someone acts a certain way.
Exactly. It offers a potentially deeper psychological insight into their core drives, their anxieties, what fundamentally makes them tick. It helps you understand not just what they do, but the underlying purpose or fear behind it.
So using these frameworks, you could potentially improve things like conflict resolution, tailoring your approach for a thinker versus a feeler type.
That's a key application, yes. But, and this is crucial, the book strongly cautions against rigid labeling.
Which feels really important.
Absolutely vital. While these frameworks offer immense insight, King's core message is, use them as models, as guides, not as definitive boxes to stuff people into. People are far more complex than any single label.
And people can change, right?
Of course. Traits can shift over time due to life experiences. So remaining flexible in your perception, seeing these as guides rather than rules, that's absolutely key to genuine understanding.
Right. Okay. And here's where I think it gets really interesting for a lot of us applying these skills. Not just to understand, but maybe also to protect ourselves and gain deeper insights in everyday life. King talks about spotting deception and also just honing our general observation skills.
Indeed. And King is quite explicit about this. He says something like, a big part of this understanding isn't just innocent curiosity. Many of us have a legitimate need to understand people better so we can detect when they might be manipulating us, hiding something, or outright lying.
So being a good judge of character is also kind of like self-defense.
In a very real sense, yes, a vital form.
Okay, let's dive into Lie Detection 101. The book is pretty sobering here. It's way harder than people think, even for the pros.
Yeah, the research isn't encouraging on that front. Most people, even highly trained professionals, really struggle to accurately detect lies. Often, they perform no better than pure chance.
50-50.
Pretty much.
Sure.
And King highlights that those common tells we think we know, avoiding eye contact, fidgeting, are often really misleading. Why? Because of huge individual differences.
A nervous truth teller looks a lot like a nervous liar.
You got it.
Yeah.
Very hard to distinguish based on those signs alone.
So if those typical cues aren't reliable, how does King suggest we improve our accuracy? He says we need to move beyond just looking for single signs.
His approach is more holistic. First, you absolutely have to establish a solid baseline of someone's normal behavior. How do they usually act and talk?
Okay, get the baseline, then what?
Then, instead of just passively watching, You engage actively. Ask open-ended, spontaneous questions. It's about creating a conversational dynamic where inconsistencies or deviations from that baseline are more likely to surface.
And one really interesting technique he mentions is using cognitive load against a potential liar. That sounds almost like interrogation.
Well, it's based on a simple principle. King explains that lying is actually cognitively harder than telling the truth. You have to invent a credible story, remember the details, and suppress the actual truth, all at the same time.
That's a lot of mental juggling.
It is. So asking strategic, unexpected questions can increase that cognitive load. This might lead to inconsistencies in their story, mistakes, pauses, or even emotional responses that don't quite match the narrative. It's about creating opportunities for them to trip themselves up.
So the big takeaway here isn't hunting for one specific tell. It's about looking at the whole conversation.
Exactly. Look for overall patterns, shifts from their baseline internal contradictions. You allow the liar, potentially, to create their own cracks in the facade through the pressure of the conversation. Don't just jump on the first odd sign.
Don't reveal your suspicions too early, maybe. Extend the conversation.
That's often the advice, yes. Let them talk more and watch for those subtle slips that break their carefully constructed narrative.
Okay, but it's not all about lie detection. It's also about generally using the power of observation better. The book talks about thin slicing, which I found really compelling.
Thin slicing is fascinating. It's this ability, which seems almost intuitive, to make remarkably accurate judgments based on very minimal information, thin slices of experience or observation.
Like judging someone quickly.
Yes, and King highlights studies showing that assessments made in just the first few minutes of meeting someone can sometimes be just as accurate as evaluations made after much longer exposure. It suggests our intuition, our rapid cognition, can be incredibly powerful in these initial assessments.
Wow. And King encourages us to be almost like Sherlock Holmes, right? Paying attention to specific details, like the actual words people choose to use.
Absolutely. He emphasizes that word choice, specific language patterns, even the frequency of pronouns like I versus we can reveal a lot.
How so?
Well, frequent I might suggest a more individualistic focus, while we could indicate a more communal or team-oriented perspective. King shows you how to listen not just to what people say, but how they say it. The nuances reveal personality, mood, focus, maybe even intentions.
And physical appearance, clothing, we might think it's superficial, but King says it speaks volumes.
It really does, even if unconsciously sometimes. King points out that grooming, style of dress, general appearance, they all hint at personality traits, maybe self-esteem levels, identity, personal values. It's part of the package we present to the world, and it's usually a conscious choice that communicates something.
Then there's our environment, our home, our possessions. The book calls them extensions of personality.
That's a great way to put it. A person's home, how they decorate it, what they choose to spend money on, even how organized or disorganized it is. It all offers clues about their personality, their values, their aspirations. What someone chooses to surround themselves with is often a deep reflection of who they are or who they want to be.
And in today's world, you can't really ignore online behavior either.
Right. King acknowledges that social media patterns, the kinds of photos shared, the emotional tone of posts, how and when people interact online can offer clues too. Even though obviously online self-presentation can be heavily curated or distorted.
It's another layer of data, maybe.
Exactly. Another layer if you analyze it carefully and with caution.
And finally, the book really pushes for active observation through asking smart questions, often indirect ones.
Yes, this is a great practical technique. King gives brilliant examples of how asking indirect or hypothetical questions can uncover deeper insights into someone's values, motivations, and self-awareness, often without making them feel defensive.
Like asking, what's your favorite charity? Instead of, are you generous?
Precisely. Or questions like, if your house was on fire, what 3 things would you rescue? Or even something playful like, what are your ideal character traits in a video game? These can reveal what people truly value and prioritize, often much more authentically than a direct question would.
So we really want to challenge you, our listener. Try applying some of these observational strategies, maybe in your next meeting or social gathering. Consciously look for those clusters of behavior King talks about. Try asking a thoughtful, indirect question.
You might be really surprised by what you learn and how much deeper your understanding of people becomes.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into Patrick King's Read People Like a Book, we've covered quite a bit. We journeyed through understanding those invisible motivations, learned to maybe decipher the unspoken stories told by the body and face.
Explored some blueprints of personality types and honed in on practical skills for better observation and maybe navigating deception.
Yeah. Ultimately, King's work, and hopefully this deep dive, gives you some powerful tools. Tools for better communication, maybe stronger relationships, better self-protection even.
And just a richer, more nuanced understanding of the people around you. It's really about cultivating empathy and emotional intelligence, isn't it? Allowing you to connect on a deeper, more meaningful level.
Absolutely. But here's maybe a final thought for you to ponder as you go out and use these insights. How does actively trying to read others, even when you have the best intentions, how does that change your own behavior, your own self-presentation?
That's interesting. Does knowing we can look for these cues make us more guarded ourselves? Or maybe more aware?
Or less authentic, perhaps? It's something to think about. Does the observer change just by observing? We encourage you to consider that as you engage with the world.